I'm Becky. Standing in the doorway of my house, the soft teal paint glowing under the porch light, I'm reminded of how far I've come. The air smells faintly of paint and lemon, and the house is quiet except for the gentle hum of the heater. It's been a year since the storm with my family, and today, we threw another party for my son, Max. As I reflect on the past, I can't help but think about how everything changed. A year ago, I was in a courtroom, my heart pounding, as I watched the judge's gavel fall. The sound echoed like thunder in my chest, and I felt a mix of relief and triumph. The judge had just granted a 4-year restraining order against my father, Henry. It was a moment I'd been waiting for, a moment that marked the end of years of manipulation and abuse. My family has always been a complex web of relationships. My father, Henry, is a controlling man who believes that power and authority are the keys to a successful family. He's always been the type to make decisions for everyone, never considering our feelings. My mother, Lily, is the peacemaker. She smooths over my father's rough edges, often at the expense of her own happiness. My brother, Leo, is the golden child. He can do no wrong in my father's eyes, while I've always been the responsible one, the one who takes care of everyone else. I'm a dental hygienist in downtown Seattle. My life was small but steady. I'd start my day with a cup of coffee before Max woke up. Then, I'd drive past the beautiful Puget Sound on my way to work, where I'd deal with patients who joked about flossing. I thought that this stability meant peace, but I was wrong. It just made me an easier target for my family. When I got pregnant with Max, I was filled with a mix of excitement and fear. I hoped that my family would support me, but instead, they let me down. My parents said they'd be there for me, but in reality, they gossiped about me to their friends while I worked double shifts to buy diapers. They came to the hospital when Max was born, but they only stayed for 15 minutes. When I started crying, they left, leaving me alone with my newborn son. After that, I stopped expecting kindness from them. I just wanted them to show up when it mattered. So, when Max's 5th birthday rolled around, I went all out. I bought balloons, set up a bounce house in the backyard, and ordered a superhero cake that cost a week's worth of groceries. I sent out invitations 6 weeks in advance, texted reminders, and even offered to pick people up. My mother told me, "Of course we'll be there," and my father added, "Leo can't wait to see him." But on the day of the party, no one came. There wasn't a single car in the driveway, and my phone didn't receive a single message. The only sounds were the squeaking of the bounce house in the backyard and Max asking, "Did Grandpa get lost?" I forced a smile and lied to him, saying maybe. That night, I boxed up the leftover cake and tried not to cry. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Need $2,200 for Leo's graduation," it read. I stared at the screen, laughing at first, thinking it was a joke. But then I realized he was serious. This was the final straw. At the clinic that day, while I was scraping plaque and making small talk with patients, I kept replaying his words in my head. Need $2,200. There was no please, no thank you, just a demand. I realized that my family had trained me to be useful, not loved. That night, after Max fell asleep, I opened my banking app. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from a newfound sense of determination. I typed in $1 and wrote best wishes in the memo line. Then I hit send. I waited for regret to wash over me, but it never came. Instead, I felt a strange calm. I'd finally drawn a line. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. "I think there's a mistake. You only sent $1, my father's text read. I stared at the screen, sipping my cold coffee. "There's no mistake," I typed back. "That's all I could afford after the birthday you skipped." Then I turned my phone face down. For the rest of the day, there was silence. I almost convinced myself that my father understood. But just before closing time, my phone lit up again. "You're being disrespectful. Family helps family. We'll talk tomorrow." It was a warning, not a suggestion. On my drive home, I called my friend, Stella. You know that refinance we talked about? I said. I did it. His name's off everything. There was a pause, then her sharp inhale. You actually did it? I did. A month ago. He just doesn't know yet. Then, honey, she said, you've already won more than you think. That night, Max fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons. I sat beside him, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. It was a stillness that used to make me feel lonely, but now it felt like a precious moment of peace. The next morning, I drove to the hardware store. The man at the counter, with gray hair and a kind smile, showed me how to change a deadbolt. 20 minutes tops, he said. Easy job if you've got the right screwdriver. Back home, I laid the tools on the kitchen counter. My hands trembled slightly as I unscrewed the old brass plate. Each turn felt like undoing a decade of manipulation. When the new lock clicked into place, I whispered, my house, my rules. By noon, my father texted again. Where's the rest of the money? I need it today. I replied, sent what I could. Best wishes. I could almost feel his fury through the phone. When I didn't answer, he escalated. I'll be by tomorrow at noon. We'll settle this face to face. I didn't want Max anywhere near this confrontation. So, I texted Stella, can Max hang with you tomorrow? Her reply came in seconds. Absolutely. Bring him at 11 o'clock. I'll have cookies waiting. The next morning, I packed Max's backpack with snacks and his favorite toy truck. You're having a playdate with Auntie Stella, I said, kissing his forehead. I'll pick you up later, okay? He smiled, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit our home. Right on schedule, there was a knock on the door. 3 hard bangs that made the picture frames tremble. Becky, open this door right now, my father's voice boomed. I stood in the hallway, my fingers brushing the new lock, my heart pounding but steady. I said, open up. I unlatched the chain, cracked the door 2 inches, and met his glare. You can stop pounding, Dad. Your key won't work. He froze, disbelief flickering across his face before anger took over. You changed the locks on me. I did. After everything I've done for you, I said. Everything you've done to me, I corrected softly. Behind him, my mother lingered on the porch steps, clutching her purse like a shield. Leah wasn't there, which somehow made it worse. It meant even he didn't want to see this. My father stepped forward, trying to wedge his foot in the door. You don't shut family out. You didn't seem worried about family when Max was blowing out candles alone, I said. He opened his mouth, then shut it. His jaw flexed. You're being dramatic. We had plans. Leo's. You had excuses, I said. You always do. For the first time in my life, I didn't lower my voice. I didn't try to soften the truth. He pointed a finger at me, shaking with rage. You think you can cut me out? I still have a say in this house. I smiled small and calm. Not anymore. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The metallic click echoed like punctuation. A minute later, I heard his car door slam, and the tires screeching down the street. I thought that was the end of it. But an hour later, I was cleaning up the kitchen when red and blue lights flickered through the window. My stomach dropped. I stepped onto the porch and saw 2 officers walking up the driveway. Ma'am, one said, we got a call from your father. He says you locked him out of his property and may be keeping a child here against court order. The world tilted. What he claims there's concern for the child's safety. I forced a breath. You're welcome to check. My son's with a friend right now, but this is my house. I refinanced it months ago. I have the paperwork inside. They followed me in. I laid the manila envelope on the table, with deed copies, payment records, everything. One officer nodded slowly. Everything checks out, ma'am. Looks like your father doesn't live here. When they left, I sank onto the couch, shaking not from fear but from the absurdity of it all. He'd really called the cops on his own daughter, and I knew he wasn't done yet. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 8:04 a.m. It was a message from my sister, Iris. Dad said you're in trouble. CPS might stop by today. Just cooperate, okay? I stared at the screen, disbelief giving way to fury so sharp it made my hands shake. He hadn't just called the cops, he'd called Child Protective Services. By noon, I was pacing the kitchen. The smell of burnt toast lingered from breakfast. When the doorbell rang, my stomach clenched. Through the window, I saw a woman in a navy blazer holding a clipboard. Her smile was careful but professional. Miss Becky Thompson? She asked when I opened the door. Yeah, I said, forcing my voice steady. You must be from CPS. Sarah? She nodded. We received a report of possible neglect. Something about leaving your child unattended. My laugh came out half-broken. That's creative. I stepped aside. Come in. As she walked through, I pointed out Max's drawings on the fridge, his school photo on the wall, the neatly stacked lunchboxes on the counter. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner and crayons. Max is with a friend right now, I said. He's fine. I can give you her number if you want to verify. Sarah nodded, scanning the living room like she'd seen the scene 100 times. You seem organized, she said finally. Do you know who might have made the report? I almost laughed again. My father. Her brows lifted slightly. That happens more often than you'd think. She closed her notebook. Everything looks fine here. I'll file this as unfounded. The moment the door closed behind her, I exhaled like I'd been underwater. Relief came, but so did a sense of foreboding. I knew my father wasn't going to give up. Stella came by that night with takeout. I told her everything, from the text to the locks to CPS. She listened, shaking her head. Girl, this isn't family anymore. This is harassment. I know, I said quietly. And I'm done playing defense. The next morning, I called Gregory, the real estate lawyer who'd handled my refinance. I need to make sure my dad can't access anything tied to the old mortgage, I said. He looked over the files and then smiled. You're clean. Everything's in your name alone, but you might want to talk to someone in family law just to make it official. That's how I met Vanessa. She had a calm voice and sharp eyes, the kind of lawyer who doesn't flinch at messy families. I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. We'll file for a restraining order, she said. He's already used law enforcement once. You need to protect yourself before he does it again. It took a week to gather everything, police reports, the CPS visit, record screenshots of his messages, even voicemails he left calling me ungrateful and unstable. Vanessa organized it all into a binder, thick enough to feel like armor. When the court date came, the air outside was heavy and wet, like the sky was holding its breath. I wore the simplest outfit I owned, jeans and a black blouse, and clutched the binder so tightly my knuckles turned white. Stella sat behind me in the gallery. My father walked in wearing his Sunday suit. My mother trailed behind him, her eyes red, refusing to look my way. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and disinfectant. Ms. Thompson, the judge said, glancing at our paperwork, you're requesting a restraining order against your father, Henry Thompson. Yes, Your Honor, my voice barely wavered. Vanessa took over, laying out each piece of evidence, the text messages, the police report from the lock incident, the CPS document marked unfounded. Henry shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening with every exhibit. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, he said. I was worried about my grandson. She's unstable, emotional. She needs family support. Family support, I whispered before I could stop myself. You called the cops on me, Dad. The judge looked at him. Sir, did you call the police and Child Protective Services on your daughter? Yes, but I had reason. Was your reason verified? He hesitated. No, but... The judge raised a hand. That's enough. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Vanessa slid a photo across the table, Max alone by the birthday cake. This, she said, was the day Mr. Thompson and his family were supposed to attend. Instead, he texted her for money. This isn't concern. It's coercion. My father's face went pale. For once, he didn't have words. When the gavel finally hit, the judge's voice was steady. 4-year restraining order granted. Mr. Thompson, you are not to contact or visit Ms. Thompson or her child directly or indirectly. Any violation will result in arrest. Outside the courthouse, the sky finally opened up. Rain poured down cold and clean. I stood on the steps, letting it soak through my hair. Stella opened her umbrella, but I waved her off. I want to feel it, I said. She smiled softly. You earned it. That night, my phone buzzed again, but it wasn't my father. It was Leo. I'm sorry, Becky. I didn't know he'd go that far. For a second, I almost replied, then I didn't. Some doors once locked should stay that way. As I checked on Max sleeping, his tiny hand resting on his stuffed bear, I realized something. This peace wasn't just relief. It was freedom. The kind you fight for. The restraining order changed everything. No more phone calls, no more texts demanding explanations or money, no more footsteps on my porch pretending to check on us. For the first time in years, mornings felt light. I could make pancakes without my stomach twisting at every buzz of my phone. Max would hum to himself while coloring, his songs filling the silence that used to be heavy with dread. Word got around fast in our family. My mother stopped by once, leaving a basket of fruit on the doorstep with a note that said, I hope you're okay. I never called her back. Leo texted on Thanksgiving, a polite happy holiday, and I replied with a thumbs up. That was enough. A month later, a letter came from CPS confirming the case was officially closed, labeled a malicious report. Vanessa called it poetic justice. He used the system, she said, and the system exposed him. Stella and I celebrated with takeout and cheap champagne. You realize, she grinned, you just ended a generational curse. Right, I laughed, then cried, realizing she was right. For the first time, I'd chosen peace over guilt, and it worked. The next week, I repainted the front door, a soft teal. New color, new chapter. Max helped, his little hands covered in paint, leaving small streaks along the bottom panel. Can we invite Grandpa to see it? He asked, innocent as ever. I knelt beside him. Maybe one day, I said, but right now, this is just ours. He nodded, satisfied, already distracted by his brush strokes. As I stand here now, looking at the teal door and thinking about the party we just had, I know that this is what home feels like. There are no shadows waiting at the front gate, no unwanted footsteps. Just laughter, warm and ordinary. Sometimes peace doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from boundaries. If you've ever had to choose peace over family, you know exactly what I mean. Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this about finding your voice when they try to take it, subscribe. You're not alone.